Inspiration Nation. Hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast, here with Joe and Ryan. How are we doing, Joe?
Yep, all good. It's all good to see everyone again. I know last week we had a little different one from Casadel Kemp and Casadel Noel, which was cool. I know we give it a shout out on, so because thanks to Ryan.
You over the phone.
That was good.
Was still edited together by Ryan.
That's
How are you doing as well, Ryan?
Thanks for giving Ryan the credit, because that's what I want.
Don't talk him up too much.
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. My ego is boosted, so that's the important part.
That's what matters most.
I tease to hang about together too much. That's what I think with all that. That's what's going on, isn't it? That's what's going on.
So this week is an exciting week for us. So we have just launched the Inspiration Nation shop.
Yes.
Which you can find. You go to inspirationnation.org.uk. There's a shop link there. You can also get to it through the JN Coaching Tech website, which of course I will try and remember to be plugging later in the show.
Yeah.
We've got t-shirts, mugs, some little sticker things, hoodies. We've got our hoodies here. You can now get one of these. So if you want to support us, you want to support the show, you want to show your love of the nation, get on there and buy yourself some merch. And I think as Joe put out, for those watching on the video, Joe is faffing horrendously to try and get a bit of merch up there. This is not QVC.
Oh, come on.
Well, it's certainly not meeting those levels. Ryan, do you know what QVC is?
I do just about
Quality
know
shopping.
what QVC is.
So, as I think Joe put out there on Instagram, that if you buy some merch, if you take a picture, if you send it to us, we will post that and we will give you a shout out. So, we would appreciate everyone's support.
Yeah, so we tweeted to like our followers that we got, and so it'd be cool. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Joe, what is the subject of today?
So today is going to be about failure, and whether we think it's actually something to do with training or whether it's lack of information. So when people fail, why is it that they fail? Is it because, one, they don't have the information to track what they're doing, or is it just, as I say, lack of training, which I think goes down to a lot of businesses and things like that, in terms of, I failed because I didn't have the information. It can be a sort of fallback onto something. So is there a thing around whether someone should be more self-reliant when they deal with failure, or should someone be giving them that information? What's the context? And I think this is really important, because when we fail, it's usually try and find an out, and I think we talked a little bit in our previous post we did with phone. I thought it's really important to get a bit more specific around what people do look at. Is it information lack of, or is it a fact of lack of a training? Because as I do training in my role, you do get people like, I can't do this or I can't do that, and we pointed out before about the unconscious incompetent model and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important to see if we can talk around, is it that lack of information, which my belief is, you may disagree, is that in this day and age where we've got Google, or the Google machine, which I want to hear in this podcast again, whether you've got that, or whether it's a fact that we still need people, frontline sort of training people, coaching people, buddying up with people. What's the actual thing where we can help people through failure? And actually, is it a case that we just people have to fail, so that it's more of a lesson, so they can become more resilient and develop those emotional strengths to push through adversity? So there's a lot to it, I think, on that. And I think for me, when I train people, when you're getting people in and they don't know anything about the subject, and suddenly they get bombarded with information, I've got too much, or is it the training they need, or is it the support they need, or is it just more information they need? And in my view, there's a bit of both, really. That's what I think. It's a bit of both, and a bit of empathy really around that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So that's what you're talking about. So it's just being conscious about the whole thing and how we're going to approach it. So it's just, do we step into this now when we talk to people, or do we stand back and let them fail, I suppose? So that's really the question. So what do you guys think about that?
It's quite interesting, because if I'm honest, I don't know where I sit with my view on this, because I can see both, and again, hopefully we'll dive into this as we go through, because I think there's a lot of different viewpoints here, and you could argue for both, because a big part of what we talk about, and what I believe in, because it's what we talk about, is that onus on yourself about the responsibility for what you do. And I've seen it where it's very easy for someone to fail at something and blame all the external factors around them without looking at themselves. Similarly, I've seen it when people will give someone some information and then they will almost wash their hands and say, well, I've told them now, so it's up to them if they get it, which I also don't always agree with. I think this and everything we're talking about there, the word responsibility just smacked for all of that for me. And I can see both sides of it. I can see where the person who's learning has a responsibility to learn. I see where organisations or businesses or projects or whatever it is also have a responsibility to the people. And I've seen, I say on both sides, people wash their hands of that responsibility. And I don't think I agree with either, but that almost seems to clash, if you like, in a viewpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really. I think there's a bit of both in there. I think you, like you said, you've got to have responsibility in terms of what you're going to do. So you going into a room and not knowing anything about what do you expect? Like, you don't expect you get an email and go, right, here's your job, get on with it. Now, back in the day, back a long time ago, it's many moons ago, when I was in my industry, and if you know me, you'll know what I'm talking about. But you used to go into your job, and it was literally, right, okay, you're doing your job, right, there's your desk, basically get on with it.
Sink or swim. That was a phrase I heard a lot when I first started.
Yeah, and there was a lot of failure in that, a ton of failure in that. But there's a big problem with that, in my view. This is my view, my own view, is that what you tend to get is you tend to like focus on the people that do love that. There's people who love it. They just say, just throw me in and I'll get on with it and I'll just go along as I do. But there's people who really don't like that, and I used to call it like I used to call it like a swimming pool. I used to little analogy when people used to like train people. Said like, first of all, we're gonna like, it's when we didn't have sort of training and coaching, and it's probably going back to the thing where we talked about where where we was at a business and they didn't have this, and we started to bring it in slowly. So I used to say to people, it's where we bring people in. You first in sort of before you go into season, you go start show, you paddle around first, and you get more confident, and as you go deeper, and you go to sort of middle section, and you're still on the floor, but you're starting to practice the strokes, and then suddenly you're like in the deep end and you're starting to sort of swim and stuff like that. And that's how I sort of structured the way you would coach or train people in that environment, rather than like when babies are born. Have you heard the thing where they just get them and they just throw them in the water? And I say it just depends on the type of person you are. And no, Ryan, you're not had a view on this yet. What sort of person do you think you are when you look at this type of subject? What do you think? Where's your preference lie? Do you think? What's your view?
I'm quite similar. I don't want to be to jump on the bandwagon, but I'm quite similar with what Lee said. I think there's responsibility on both sides, and I think that I personally like the sink or swim model. As long as it depends how fresh I am to a subject. However, if I have a general understanding of what's going on, I would rather just be thrown at it and kind of learn that way. And I think that kind of falls back to my learning style. I think we've spoken about it before, but I'm quite a kinesthetic learner, so I like to learn by doing. And a lot of the time, I would like to kind of do the job or do the task to find out if I can do it, and then to teach myself that way. And then if something doesn't work, you learn from that kind of mistake and pick yourself up and move back on from there. But I can understand how that can be, to maybe a more organised mind, I can understand how that might be a bit kind of, well, that's too much, let's step back a bit. I do get it, but for me personally, I prefer, if I kind of know what I'm doing, I'd rather just get stuck in and get on with it than kind of where I have a general idea, kind of not really wasting people's time, but knowing that I can pick up what I need to do and just move with it. I'd rather just kind of get in and get on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I see a lot of this feeling like when I see a lot of mixed people like that, where they just want to get on with it, and with those type, it's really difficult to sort of draw them in, like to get them to wait for others. And so one of the good strategies that I actually use with this is if I have someone who's like that, who just loves to jump in, I tend to use them as a buddy for someone else to help along with the other person, and they bring them along.
Do you find their, I don't know, confidence is the right word, but I suppose it is, but because they're not fearful of what they don't know and they're diving in, do you find that kind of rubs off onto the other person?
It does, yeah.
It's like they're a life support for them almost.
It's like an attitude, but you've got to be careful with that, because they can get too confident and almost like get a bit arrogant. So I have had things where, I've got this, I smashed this, so what I'll do is, okay, let's see how good you are then, and I'll take them on a call, and then I had someone come to me, do you know what, I don't really want to do it, because it's almost like a piece of arrogance that came out, but I needed to check where they were. It wasn't because I wanted to bring them down, it's just I wanted to check where they were, to see, actually, are they where they say they are, or is there something else that they think, oh, I've got this, and just saying it because they want to impress, and I want to know really where you are. And it was really interesting because they come up to me and say, oh, I'm really not ready for this. I said, okay, I knew it wasn't good. I said, I wanted to test you. And when they come, I said, it's not going to be terrible. I just wanted to test you where you are. I know, just obviously getting very anxious about where that was, but I wanted to challenge it because I think people who are in that like to be challenged, and so I'll reflect that, and so I'll reflect it back to them. So they'll see that, but they're great people. Like I said, great because you can just give them information, they'll run with it. So things like systems training or things like that, I've found that the attitude and resilience is great for just letting those people hear it is. Here's the model. Let's just go through it. Off you go, and I'll just as you go through it, as you make errors, let it come up to you, and I'll talk you through it. So I think that really works well. So if we talk about, we talked a lot about business, haven't we? We talked a lot around, about when we're in training rooms or coaching rooms or whatever. How do you think this sort of deals within like general life then? In terms of like dealing with everyday problems and challenges, have you had anything where you think actually I failed and I think, well, I thought I should have more information, or I think I should have more training, or could have looked at something and done something? You had anything like that that's come across?
And again, this, I don't want to make it too one-dimensional, and I've got a follow-up for it in a minute, which I hope might balance it out. But again, as Ryan said, both kinesthetic type people, you're of that same ilk as well, Joe. We came up in the sink or swim world, and we survived it. So obviously part of everything is what you came up with. So some ramble that I'm that sort of person that I put more responsibility on myself than externally. And an example and it's something I've failed with multiple times, and it's just popped in my head, but then my thought is never once did I think someone would be showing me more to do this. And simply because I'm not great with mechanical things with my hands, practical stuff like that. And I read an interesting article and it talked about it. Like, for example, my dad, if I've got a problem in my car, he can listen to it and he can know what the problem is. And part of that is that you train as a mechanic, so obviously he's going to know it. But also, if you owned a car 20, 30 years ago, they were not as reliable as they are now. They broke down more often. You didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have the same infrastructure. So as a part of life, you had to learn how to do basic things with your car, because you couldn't just pick up your phone like you do now, or have a car that's unlikely to break down for 20,000 miles. So that's my excuse for not having too many practical skills, and I went off complete side ramble there. But when I moved into where I live at the moment, the tap in the kitchen was dripping, drip, 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 and it started to drive me mental because it was just a constant dripping of the tap. So I decided, that's right, I can fix it myself. And I asked someone what I need to do with it, and they said what to do, and I went in, and it wasn't the same sort of tap, but I kind of hit a roadblock. I was like, oh, what do I do now? I nearly said a S or a C word there. So then I Googled, and it explained about a bit of a tap, so then I took pieces, and I went through all these steps where then I was YouTubing, and I found out I got the wrong. I went on this huge journey of trial and error where eventually I fixed it, and I'm pretty sure I could now take apart any tap in the country because I learned about them all on the way to finding out what my one actually was. And where you said about things where you constantly fail, that I don't know why, it's a real arch example, that popped in my head, but because of my mindset, it never occurred to me of someone should have told me how to do it or something like that. I think I have that sort of problem solving mind, and then like we said, I know we're staying away from the work bits, but that carries over into my professional life where I problem solve. And I think a bit because I'm that sort of mind, I do have to remind myself that not everyone is. And the way I used to describe, because I do believe you've got to have an infrastructure and stuff around stuff as well, and the way I used to describe it to people, and this is way back when we used to do it, Joe, going back 15 odd years now, I said it's like a jigsaw. And each day you're going to learn something new, and each bit will fill in another square of that jigsaw until the whole thing's done and you know everything. And to me, that's quite comfortable to know it's all filling in and where it goes. But then there's the sort of people who will have an absolute panic attack that they don't know what that finished thing is going to look like until it gets there. With the irony that if you could just give them a finished thing, you wouldn't need to build the jigsaw in the first place. And I have to remind myself that that's what people need sometimes. But I think some of it, and it's interesting you say about the in-work thing and the out-work thing, because you get, and I see a lot more of it now in the workplace than I ever had before, where there is a need for that structured training that gives you that roadmap. And I just think as the world's developed and support has become more of a natural thing, it's more of an expectation. But similarly, around I take out my pocket with these things, iPhone, for anyone who's listening rather than watching, are extremely complex. You get all your apps for it. There's a load of different features. There's loads of ways for it to work. Unless you download it, there's no instruction book. We just pick it up and we use it and we figure out and we go. And I suppose in that lot of the same sort of people who really want that structure can also pick up something like an iPhone and just run with it. And I don't know if that's because different environments make it, or in fact, is stuff like this a lot more intuitive, and we need to look at the way we structure learning and stuff to be a bit more intuitive, which I don't really have an answer on that. It's just a thing that rumbles around in my head. But I think it comes back to this thing about where the responsibility sits, and actually, is it someone's brain being more switched off in a professional environment? Is it that the professional world is still quite rigid in how it delivers stuff and it's not moved on in the same way that you don't need instruction books for a lot of stuff just because they are more user friendly? I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I think the intuitive piece for me is like I think Steve Jobs, created the first iPhone, and you just used it, and I think a lot of that, I think this would help a lot of people with people who want to get on and deal with it, but also the people who need structure, because if the apps are like, you just go onto an app store and download, it's almost like a structure there, but it's almost like an inherent structure. You're born into it now. The generation is born into that. So is there a piece around where could we take things like that, and actually before people join businesses or before you start to do it, is there a sort of pre-work you do? This is what we're doing, a bit more introduction before they actually join the business. Outside the business, I know we're talking about business, not mad, isn't it? But I had an idea where even before someone joins a business, they do these videos where you can look about this. You can actually sample the work before you get into work, or sample the environment before you get into the environment. And I think things like that might make it more intuitive rather than here's your desk, off you go. And I think those things would really help. And I think for me though, when I get people in that need structure, like I don't know if I mentioned before in the podcast before, but where I write things on the board, because there's like maybe a third or to half of the people that actually go and look at my board to see what the structure is. Like nearly half the room will want, what does this program look like, and what am I meant to do at the end of it? And even people go beyond that. So, but people who like tend to just run with it and jump in, just don't even look at the board, and they just jump in and run with it. So now, how does that happen? How does someone, with that mindset, do that? And when you said, we come from that environment, like Lee and I, we come from that environment where we have to do these, just jump in and do it. I don't believe I was that type of sink or swim person. It was like I was forged to be that person through the environment.
Because you had to.
I had to do it. It was like there was no, there's this intuitive thing you can follow. No, it was like, there it is. And I remember actually, I was only working for a couple of months, and I got a verbal warning there, something I'd done wrong, So it's like these really high level, really sort of high penalties for not getting it wrong, but for sampling that thing and saying, hey, you've done it wrong, and almost like a what do they call it? A real big penalty for getting it wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think that really works, because you can get that thing of fear, and people start to.
That's what I was going to say. It's when you build up that fear of failure thing.
So that then may have, because actually I'll make sure I get this right. Maybe I'll ask some more people before I do that. But then it doesn't encourage me to sort of stretch out a bit. So there's two ways to look at that. There's the jump in and see how it is, but make sure that when people make mistakes, be okay that they've made the mistakes, and give them a structure to say it's okay to make mistakes, as long as we move on from it. That's fine. Or is it the other way, where we don't want to make a mistake, and here we go? But I don't think that encourages it either. I think there's got to be a blend of the two. And of course, if someone keeps making mistakes, then what's the reason for that, and going deeper with it. So going back to whether failure is information or whether it's training, I think it's still both. I think it's whether like you're fixing a tap. I mean, I've done a similar thing where we had it wasn't a tap, but mine was like a ball cock. I hate DIY. I hate DIY. You wouldn't know by now. But I went and asked my brother-in-law, and he told me about his ball cock. And
twice now, Joe. Well done.
Can you stop? But I had to change it anyway. I changed it, but it was like stressful for me. I didn't like it, but I did it.
Yeah.
I had to find out, go and get it, fix it up. But it was a stressful thing. Done a bit of DIY before where I didn't know about electrics. I needed to blew myself up. That wasn't funny either, because these old things.
That explains a lot, Joe.
And so I don't like to touch them. But then there's the whole thing. But then I experimented. You see, I experimented, and like something that could be fatal. I mean, I don't like messing around with plumbing, and I don't like mucking around with electrics. There's two of my pet hates. But it doesn't mean I wouldn't have a go if I had to. But now, like Lee said, you can go and call on someone. But what I tend to do is ask that person, what are you doing? How is that happening? And maybe there's something that I can take it. There's something an easy takeaway. So does that mean I'm avoiding failure? Does that mean I'm avoiding it by getting someone in? Or does that mean I'm taking a practical advantage to go and call someone to do it rather than me doing it? Does it mean I'm afraid of doing it? I just don't want to do it. I think that's for me, is I don't want to do it. I'd rather have someone else come in and do it to a professional standard and get on with it. I mean, earlier this week, I had to paint my deck. And I had to stain it, and I did that myself, and I didn't get any instructions, got a pressure washer and done that. And again, it could have failed, it could have broken some decking or whatever. But again, it's having that try, swinging at the plate, they call it.
And if it did go wrong,
yeah,
you dust yourself off, learn from it, and move
I'd
on,
have
or
to
would
deal
you
with
be
it.
like, well, no one's told me how to do this, I don't know
I'd
what
have
I'm
to
doing.
deal with it. Now, what we're doing through the podcast and all the things we do, you go, well, okay, so it's broken, what's the next step? I think now, and almost decharge you from the emotion of failure and having it as part of, okay, either I would do what Lee did, go on Google and say, okay, what's going on? That's brilliant. I mean, like, I didn't have that, or we didn't have that. There was no Google back in the day, so it'd be Dad, or but it might be called my brother-in-law, or it might be called my nephew-in-law. How you doing? Actually, he let me borrow the pressure washer actually for doing it. But yeah, so it's I think before you get the emotional thing to go, hey, I failed, I'm not touching it anymore. What's the next step? I think there's a lot to be said for that. Act in the moment and go, I'm going to give it a go, see what happens, and then respond. Don't react to it. So you go, oh, I failed, and like it's all the end of the world. It's like, how do we respond to it? So I think it's both. It's information. Is it training? Do I need training? Is there a video? With YouTube, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, YouTube tutorials are just like, for me, are just crazy good now. So I think we have this where we can move on. Whether it's business, and whether it's personal. Now I did a video. Was it this morning? It was this morning about problems, and that our problems are unique to us. You saw that one this morning. But that's what I believe. Like when we get problems throughout our day, whatever they are unique to you, and they're unique to you. They're almost like I see them like as a sort of, the diary things when you get back in the day, get diary and get your list of stuff. You go through the day, you wake up, don't you? You sort of got a plan, something comes in, you've got to deal with it. That's that problem that you've got to solve that day, and the way you solve it, the way you go about it, dictates what character you're going to be, and build a habit of how you problem solve. And as Lee said earlier, which I thought was really fascinating, was like, I'm doing this now, like in my personal life, and I know now it flows over to my professional life, and like I'm doing this professional life, and actually it flows back over into my personal life. So I think it's a way of life, and this is why we're doing this podcast, because we want you to succeed by responding and going, what's the next step? Who do I need to call? Where do I need to go? And not going, I'm just giving up, I'm going to go and crawl back and just not do anything and leave it. Have a go and just do those sorts of things. That's how I feel about it. And so Ryan, I don't know whether you've had any problems today, but there'll be a stack of problems or whatever you've had today. Lee, you might have had some today. Myself, what I've had today, like I had to say to Lee today, before I come to this podcast, I said, I forgot got to go to a garden party. So I said, right, so it's like a mini problem. If you think about it in the moment, I've got to adjust my schedule. So I've got to say, Lee, do you mind if I just postpone for an hour and then go to this, because I've forgotten about that. So these are the sorts of things, I think, how you approach it. I could have gone, oh, Lee, do you know what? It's too late for the podcast. Couldn't I? When we do that let's not worry about it. But I know for me, this is one of the most important things that we're adding value to the world, I think. And for us to sort of, cancer will be like feeding to my character. This is. I'm saying that this is not important to me, but it is very important. So it's got to happen. And I'm just really happy that you guys are both on board with it, because it's I think we're all part here of Inspiration Nation and creating it. And I think that's the thing, and that for me that was a problem. Like even with my daughter today, she was struggling. We did the anxiety, was struggling today. She blew up today. And how do we deal with that? Jen had to go and deal with that, and so we had to go and have a discussion. And I had to bring her up on a. This is all around all the videos that I do and everything. I'd say, and I had to sort of go in hard and say that's not acceptable. I had to do that, but again, that's another. How did I respond to that? I had to think about that. I thought, I could go in. Do I go in hard? Do I go in soft? Do I bring that up? So again, it's problem solving on the fly. But I think since going to Inspiration Nation and talking about the things we're doing, actioning them, just looking for the growth. Looking at is it information, is it training? I think it's a bit of both. I mean, all this stuff comes from experience and actually doing the things, and so that's that's what come up. That's a problem. That's 2 points I highlighted today. And so those are the sort of things to talk about.
It's really interesting you say about being part of the nation, Joe, because if you listening want to join the Inspiration Nation, just head over to your Google machine, put in JN Coaching Technologies. It'll bring you over to Joe's website. Loads of fantastic resources on there to help you out. And as we say, coaching is Joe's bread and butter. It's what he loves to do. If you want his assistance, you can contact Joe through the website. And as we mentioned earlier, don't forget to click the link for the shop and get yourself some fantastic Inspiration Nation merchandise. That again is JN Coaching Technologies.